She smiled at me before I even noticed her. Just like that, in the soft glow of the library's desk lamp, she smiled, and it felt like the world had paused for a heartbeat. "Late nights are my favorite chapter," she said, flipping a page without looking up. Her voice was calm, but something in it made my stomach twist. I hadn't planned to be here this late. The university library should have been empty, and it almost was, except for her. She moved with that quiet confidence of someone who had read every book in the room a dozen times, but still found joy in the margins. I wanted to ask how she could still smile like that at 39 past midnight, but the words stuck somewhere between my brain and my lips. Her hair caught the lamplight, the reddish-brown strands curling slightly at the ends, like they'd been shaped by years of late nights and quiet reflection. She wasn't trying to impress anyone. Her clothes were simple, a cardigan over a loose blouse. But the way she leaned into her book, shoulders relaxed, fingers brushing the pages, made it impossible not to notice her. My fingers itched to brush against the spine of my own book, pretending I belonged here too. I cleared my throat and muttered a lame, hi." She looked up, and those green eyes, sharp but soft, scanned me like she was measuring whether I was a threat, or maybe a distraction. "You're late," she said, closing the book just a crack. Her lips curved faintly, almost imperceptibly. "I thought the library closed hours ago." "I got caught up," I said. It sounded weak, but my pulse raced anyway. I hadn't meant to be nervous, but everything about her made me nervous. The way she didn't look away. The way she seemed both distant and fully aware of me at the same time. A quiet moment stretched between us. I wanted to ask her name properly, learn the cadence of her laugh, but I didn't. Instead, I shifted my chair closer, pretending to reach for a book. My elbow brushed hers. Just a flicker of contact, and heat shot up my arm. She didn't pull away. She only smiled a little wider, eyes catching something she wasn't saying. The library clock ticked somewhere overhead, too loud in the quiet room. I noticed the faint scent of coffee lingering near her, even though her cup was empty, and I imagined us talking over it someday. Imagined her voice spilling secrets that belonged only to the night, and me leaning closer, because somehow, I knew she'd let me. "I like seeing someone else here," she said suddenly, almost as if she were thinking aloud. "Most nights, it's just me and the stacks." Her hand brushed her hair back, and my heart stuttered. I could see the faint crease by her eyes when she smiled, the little signs that no one notices unless they're paying attention. I wanted to tell her that I'd come here every night if it meant seeing that smile again. I wanted to ask if she felt the same tension I did, that small, electric tug between two people who shouldn't, maybe, but do. Then, just as I opened my mouth to speak, the quiet was broken. The library doorbell rang, sharp and sudden, slicing through the warm lamplight. She froze. I froze. And for a second, the whole world narrowed down to her gaze locking onto mine, questioning, waiting. Some instinct told me this wasn't just a visitor. This was something else. Something that would change the way we looked at each other forever. And I didn't know if I was ready for it. The doorbell echoed again, distant now, but its vibration lingered in the room like an aftertaste. She didn't move toward it. Instead, she leaned back, crossing her arms loosely, and for a moment, her smile wavered, like a shadow passed over her. I wanted to ask her what she was thinking, but the words felt heavy. There was a gravity around her, something I couldn't place at first. And then, as she tucked a stray hair behind her ear, I saw it, lines at the corners of her eyes, not just from age, but from years of carrying things she hadn't shared with anyone. "You come here often?" she asked quietly, eyes on the shelf beside her. I wasn't sure if she was asking about the library or about me. "More than I probably should," I admitted, running a hand through my hair. I guess I like the quiet." She nodded slowly, her gaze drifting. "Quiet is safer, isn't it?" I swallowed. There was a vulnerability in her voice, soft and fleeting, and I didn't know if I was supposed to answer or just listen. "Yeah. Safer than some things." My own heart thudded in the spaces between words. She glanced at me then, and there it was, the flicker of recognition, of someone who has made choices they can't undo. I've had my share of regrets, she admitted, almost under her breath, as if saying it louder would break something. People you let slip away. Chances you thought you didn't deserve. I felt an ache. I wanted to reach across the table, touch her hand, and say, I get it. But I stayed still, because somehow, the risk of this, of wanting her, already felt too sharp to act on. There was more I wasn't telling her, too. My own mistakes, my own inexperience with love, my own hunger for something real. I was 23, and the world had made me impatient, reckless, but she had depth. Depth I wanted to explore, even if it scared me. And yes, the age gap. Yes, the idea that she might see me as someone too young, too naive. That everything about this, from the first smile to the late-night coffee, carried a weight of taboo I couldn't ignore. It made my pulse quicken, even as I tried to tell myself not to. I never thought someone your age would notice me, I said, trying to keep my tone light, but failing miserably. Her eyes softened at that, a blush creeping along the edge of her cheek, just faint enough that I thought I might be imagining it. She shifted in her chair, leaning just slightly closer. The smell of coffee and books wrapped around her like armor, and for a heartbeat, I imagined brushing my fingers against hers, not just a touch, but a confirmation that maybe, just maybe, we weren't completely alone in feeling this. Her lips parted as if she wanted to speak, then closed again. A shared silence settled between us, thick and electric, like a promise neither of us dared to voice. And in that space, I realized something terrifying and exhilarating. We were both here, both aware, and both wanting to cross a line we didn't know how to name. Her hand brushed the edge of my notebook, not fully, but enough that the heat lingered. And in that fleeting contact, everything unspoken hung in the air: desire, hesitation, curiosity, and the dangerous thrill of being seen. I was stacking books when she leaned over, pointing to a title I'd never noticed. Her fingers brushed mine again, and this time, I didn't pull back. Heat spread through my chest, sharp and insistent. Careful, I whispered, but the words felt like a dare. She laughed softly, low, the kind of laugh that makes your stomach knot and your ears ring at the same time. Careful? She echoed, tilting her head. Why? Afraid you'll fall for me? I froze. The air seemed to thicken. I wanted to say something, anything, but my tongue felt like lead. She knew exactly what she was doing. I knew exactly what she was doing. And then, just as the tension teetered on the edge, the door swung open. Her assistant, a younger woman with crisp hair and sharper eyes, peeked in. Miss Callahan, the last patrons are leaving. She straightened immediately, mask sliding back on. The spell broke, but the pulse between us didn't. Her eyes flicked to mine, subtle, secret, loaded. A warning? An invitation? I didn't know, and I didn't want to. I tried to shake off the moment, but my mind refused. Every step I took toward my own table felt like moving away from her gravity. She moved to gather her things, and I wanted to follow, but something stopped me. You should go, she said softly, not looking at me. There was a quiet edge to it, the kind that comes from experience. Someone like her knows when desire is dangerous. But danger has a taste I couldn't resist. I can't, I said, and my voice cracked. She finally met my eyes, just for a second, and I saw it, the same ache I felt, mirrored in hers. Then she shook her head slightly, a tiny, almost imperceptible motion, and turned away. I hated the way my chest tightened. This was reckless. I knew it. But there was no stopping the pull. Her presence, her smell, the way her cardigan fell over her shoulders, it all burned into me. And then the guilt hit, sudden and cold. She had a life outside this library, responsibilities I couldn't touch. And me. I was young, fumbling, a stranger creeping into her late-night sanctuary. Was I a fool? Was I risking too much? I took a deep breath, tried to steady myself, when my roommate's text buzzed. You still at the library? Weird night. My thumb hovered over the screen. If anyone knew how long I'd been here, how close I'd been to whatever this was, it could ruin everything. She glanced at me one last time before disappearing into the hall. Her eyes lingered, and I thought I saw a flicker of doubt, maybe regret, maybe longing. My heart thumped so loudly I was sure she heard it. I wanted to call out, to step closer, to let all caution go. But I didn't. And maybe that was the cruelest part, the closeness, the almost, the unspoken. A single page fell from her bag, landing near my foot. I bent down, hesitated, and picked it up. A line of text caught my eye, something personal, handwritten in the margin. My pulse spiked. And just then, the library door clicked shut behind another visitor. Someone else was coming. Someone who shouldn't see this. Someone who could ruin everything. I couldn't stop staring at her as she returned to the desk, eyes flicking nervously toward the door. Something had changed. Her calm, quiet control was fraying at the edges. She kept straightening books, stacking papers, but her hands trembled ever so slightly. I could feel it even from a distance, a ripple in the air between us. I didn't mean to keep you up, I said, but the words sounded hollow. I wanted her to look at me, to acknowledge that tension, but she only bit her lip and nodded. You didn't, she whispered finally, almost too low to hear. But I did. And I wanted to lean in, close the distance between us, but the world outside this small library pressed in. Rules, age, expectations. Then it happened. A knock on the glass door outside. A student? No. My stomach dropped. Her assistant again, but the look in her eyes was different this time, sharp, almost warning, almost jealous. She clenched her hands around a stack of overdue slips. I saw her pulse flicker at her wrist. I wanted to ask why, but before I could, she finally turned to me, fully, her green eyes locking with mine. Do you know what it's like? She said, her voice trembling. To want something you shouldn't? I swallowed. The words hung between us, fragile and dangerous. I think I might, I said, my throat tight. My hands itched to reach for hers, to anchor us both in the impossible pull between us. Her lips parted, and the tension snapped like a wire. She took a step closer. Too close. My heart pounded so loud I thought she'd hear it. I could smell the faint coffee on her sleeve, the subtle scent of jasmine she wore, and suddenly, everything else, the door, the rules, the world outside, faded. I shouldn't, she said, her voice breaking slightly. I can't. Her hand brushed mine as she gathered another book, and the contact lingered longer than it should have. My fingers tingled. Desire burned like fire through me. I don't care, I whispered, more to myself than to her, and I saw her flinch, a small, dangerous shiver. We were both frozen in that impossible moment, wanting, but terrified. Every glance, every breath, every inch between us was electric. I wanted to close the space, wanted to feel her skin against mine, but something held me back. Something in her gaze, full of fear and longing, warned me not to leap. And then, from the quiet hall outside, the echo of footsteps. Someone was coming. My pulse surged. She stiffened, eyes darting to the door, then back to me. The unspoken question between us, do we stop, or do we finally give in, hung in the air like smoke. Time slowed. The library, the books, the lamplight, all of it faded into the tension that pressed on us from every side. And I knew, in that suspended heartbeat, that everything was about to change. I wanted to reach for her. I wanted to say the words that could never be unsaid. And yet, the next step, the next word, the next motion, could destroy everything. And then the door began to open. The door swung open, and my chest sank. Not the assistant this time, it was her ex-husband. My stomach turned over before I even recognized him. He didn't smile. He didn't greet her. He just stood there, hands in his pockets, eyes scanning the library like he owned every inch of it. She froze mid-step, one hand gripping the edge of the desk. Her calm had vanished, replaced with that sharp, panicked tension I'd seen before, but now it was different. Raw. Exposed. Vulnerable. I didn't expect you, she said softly, voice tight, trying to regain control. He ignored her words, his gaze landing on me. And in that moment I realized, the world had just tilted. Something that had felt private, intimate, safe, wasn't anymore. I wanted to step back, to disappear behind the nearest shelf, but something in her eyes, hurt, fear, a flash of something unspoken, rooted me to the spot. It's not what you think, she said, but her words sounded brittle, fragile. He laughed, low, bitter. Oh, I know exactly what I think. The tension between them crackled like static. And somewhere deep, I felt the sharp sting of jealousy, hot and unreasoning. My fingers curled into fists at my sides, the ache of wanting her, but not daring to act, twisting tighter. I wanted to protect her. I wanted to yell at him to leave. I wanted to grab her hand and pull her away to somewhere safe. But I stayed silent, swallowed by the impossibility of the moment. She shifted slightly, just enough that our knees brushed. The contact, small and electric, made my heart hammer. Her ex-husband's gaze flicked to us, sharp and assessing, and suddenly I felt the full weight of the rules we'd been tiptoeing around. You don't understand, she said, turning her eyes back to him, voice stronger now. This isn't about what you think. Nothing you see here changes that. But I did understand. Every second of silence, every brush of hands, every hesitant look, we were treading a line she couldn't cross in front of him. And it was terrifying. He stepped closer, the air between them thick with tension, and I could feel her body stiffen. My own pulse raced, mind spinning with fear, desire, and the impossible urge to step into that space and claim her, even if it was wrong. And then she did something I didn't expect. She grabbed her bag, stood up straight, and looked at me. Her eyes, so full of urgency, care, and unspoken invitation, caught mine. For the briefest second, the library shrank until it was just the two of us, suspended in that fleeting heartbeat. You need to trust me, she whispered, almost to herself. Almost to me. And I wanted to. I wanted to throw caution to the wind, to reach for her and never let go. But the man standing in the doorway, the stakes, the past, they made it impossible to act without consequences. I swallowed hard. My chest ached. And just as her ex-husband opened his mouth to speak, she turned sharply, grabbed my hand, and pulled me behind a shelf. We pressed close, breath mingling, hearts racing, and I realized the line we'd been dancing along, between desire, restraint, and danger, had just disappeared. We pressed against the shelf, hiding from the man who had once been part of her life and now threatened the fragile bubble we'd built. My heart pounded in my chest, loud enough I thought she might hear it over her own ragged breaths. She leaned closer, brushing my shoulder with hers, and I felt a jolt of something I couldn't name, fear, yes, but also longing. The danger made everything sharper, every look, every touch, every whisper between us. I shouldn't, she whispered, voice trembling, barely audible. But I heard it. I understood. And I wanted to argue, to say that none of it mattered, that I didn't care about age, rules, or past lives. Her hand found mine, gripping it tightly. The warmth, the pressure, grounded me. But I can't stop myself, she admitted, voice breaking. I shouldn't want this, shouldn't want you. I didn't answer. I only leaned closer, forehead nearly touching hers. The world shrank to the two of us, the library, the soft hum of the night, and the impossible pull between what was right and what felt inevitable. Her green eyes flicked to mine, searching, questioning, and then I saw it, trust. A quiet, shaky trust that maybe, just maybe, we could navigate this together. And I realized I'd risk everything to see her smile like that again, to hear her laugh softly in the night, to feel the brush of her hand against mine without fear. A loud exhale, her fingers curling over mine, and she let herself lean into me. I held her, careful and hesitant at first, then with more certainty, as if the world had finally granted permission for this small rebellion. Her lips hovered near mine, and I caught my breath, aware that 1 second could change everything. I wanted to kiss her, wanted to claim that fleeting moment, but I paused, letting the weight of choice settle between us. "I don't know what happens next," she murmured. "I don't. I just know I want this, for however long we can." That was enough. More than enough. I nodded, gripping her hand as if letting go could undo everything. "Then we'll figure it out," I whispered. "Together." Her ex-husband's voice drifted faintly from the hall, a reminder that reality waited outside our stolen moment. But for once, we didn't move. We stayed pressed together, sharing warmth, tension, and the unspoken truth. We had crossed the line, and neither of us regretted it. I wanted to tell her everything, how I noticed the little things, the way she tucked her hair behind her ear, the quiet sadness behind her smile, but the words weren't necessary. She already knew. She felt it too. We lingered, fingers intertwined, breaths mingling, hearts beating in a rhythm only we could hear. In that fragile silence, full of risk and hope, I understood, love isn't tidy. It isn't perfect. But it is ours, messy, human, real. The library doors creaked somewhere in the distance, a reminder that the world would intrude again. But for now, nothing mattered except this moment, us, and the knowledge that whatever came next, we wouldn't walk away from each other. And as we stepped back from the shelf, our hands still entwined, I realized the impossible had already begun. The library felt different the next night. Softer somehow, quieter, like it had exhaled and allowed us a little space to breathe. She was there first, as usual, tucking a book under her arm, her green eyes catching the lamplight. But this time, there was no tension hovering between us, just a fragile, beautiful understanding. I slid into the chair across from her, our fingers brushing when I reached for my notebook. That touch didn't startle or ignite panic. It felt like permission, a quiet agreement that we had crossed a threshold neither of us regretted. "I was thinking," she began, voice calm but gentle, "that maybe late nights don't have to be solitary." Her lips curved into that small, private smile that had captured me from the very beginning. I tried to match it, but my chest tightened. "I think I could get used to this," I admitted, eyes lingering on her as she adjusted the lamp just slightly, as if she wanted to create a small circle of light just for us. We talked in low tones, our words weaving around each other, half conversation, half confession. She spoke of books she loved, memories she tucked away, and I shared my dreams, fumbling, earnest, and impatient. Every story, every laugh, every pause between us deepened the bond that had been simmering since that first smile. Outside, the city hummed quietly. The rain had stopped, leaving the streets glossy and reflective, like the world itself had paused for a moment to honor what we'd found. She reached for my hand again, this time intentionally, letting our fingers intertwine with ease. "I don't know what the future holds," she said softly, "but I want to see where this goes. With you." The weight of those words, simple but powerful, settled over me. I nodded, swallowing the lump in my throat. "Me too," I said, meaning every word. And for the first time, the age, the risks, the outside pressures, they didn't matter. Not tonight. We lingered like that, hands together, breaths mingling, comfortable in the unspoken promise that we'd navigate the world as a team, however messy or uncertain it might be. The library had become ours in that small way, a place of refuge and beginnings. Eventually, we stood, packing up our books, moving with the ease of people who had survived tension, desire, and fear, and had found each other anyway. I felt a thrill of anticipation, not for the story we were leaving behind, but for the chapters still to come. As we stepped toward the door, she glanced at me, eyes shining with quiet joy. "Late nights might just be my favorite chapter now," she said. And in that moment, I realized that some stories aren't about endings. They're about knowing you're finally in the right chapter, with the right person.